After you've had the chance to play around on different styles of jumps and you're getting comfortable on those steeper, more aggressive takeoffs, and you're really starting to feel what it should be like to pop into the air and start controlling your body movements in the air, the next step is speed control. Speed control is huge, and it's what's going to make you really have full control of your bike when you're in the air and playing around on different types of ramps and really technical airs. This lesson will cover two major techniques when it comes to speed control on jumps. Number one is scrubbing a jump. Essentially, this means you can go extra fast, scrub your speed, and not go deep on the landing. You're going to land exactly where you're supposed to. The second technique is popping, which is just like it sounds like, going off a ramp and popping as high as you can. Each of these techniques has their own specific purpose. For example, when you're scrubbing, the main reason to scrub something is to carry as much speed as possible without going too far in a jump. So you want to stay nice and low and go really fast. Racers use a scrubbing technique on jumps all the time because it's a really optimal way to hit jumps, go really fast, and not go too far. Popping is almost the exact opposite because you're losing speed, but you're going higher in the air, and that's really cool in terms of like style and tricks. And you'll see more trick or slopestyle riders really try to pop stuff as high as they can because it just simply looks really cool. I'm going to break down all the things you need to know to master each of these techniques, starting with scrubbing. To get really good at scrubbing, you really need to understand what's going on in the air and what exactly the movement is. As you're scrubbing, you're pushing the bike away from you and keeping your weight as low to the ground as possible to maximize the speed you're going off the ramp, yet minimizing the distance you travel. This keeps you going fast, and it's just like is a really effective way to maximize your speed through a line. Now, the way you approach the takeoff when you're scrubbing is the number one thing that's going to make or break how low you are to the ground and the distance you're going to travel. You really want to stay as low as possible to the ground as you're coming off the ramp. So stay in that neutral position, heels dropped, kind of drop your inside shoulder on one side, whichever side you prefer to turn to. For example, with myself, I like to turn to the right, so I kind of lean my body to the right a bit. I find making a bit of lean kind of gives you that little bit of motion, so you're not traveling in such a linear direction. You have a little more movement and a little more room to work with coming off the ramp. As you're doing this, you want to imagine that you're going backwards the second you get in the air. So shooting your weight back is going to stop you from going too far and popping up and over forward. What I do to make this happen is I open up my body. I imagine pushing my bike down towards the landing by opening up my arms and straightening them out, dropping my butt back. So I'm essentially extending my body and making it nice and long, yet low to the ground. My seat is almost in my chest, like if I'm rolling down a steep piece of terrain. It's almost the same thing, like I'm back and I'm down. So imagine that position you learn when you're first riding down steeper terrain. That's the body position you're in as you're in the air. As that's happening, keep pushing that bike down, spot your landing, and then get yourself in that nice position to be able to compress and preload the second you hit the landing, because that's what you're doing when you're scrubbing. You're trying to race and you're trying to get through a line as quick as possible. Scrubbing looks really cool and it's really practical. There's nothing like getting low and sideways to a jump, but my personal favorite thing to do is the exact opposite. That's going really high in the air and making jumps look way bigger than they actually are, because I can just blast off them and boost really high in the air. And that involves popping and really working on that technique of how you launch off a ramp. I'm going to show you how to do this. It's not necessarily the quickest way to get through a line. It's actually way slower for the most part because you're spending way more time in the air, but it's a ton of fun. And if you can get good at popping, your bike control is going to increase a huge amount in the air on jumps. When I was just describing scrubbing, I was asking you to visualize getting in the air and going backwards. You're doing the same sort of preloading technique when you're popping a jump, but rather than trying to go backwards the second you pop into the air, you're trying to go directly up. One way I think about it, when I'm trying to air a jump as high as I can, I'm thinking about doing a big squat and then jumping in the air. So imagine there's a fence in front of you and you have to jump over it without getting a running start. You will need to preload and get as low as you can and really pop up. And that's what I'm doing when I'm coming off a takeoff ramp. I'm getting my body nice and low, knees and elbows bent low, and then I'm popping and exploding off the takeoff ramp. The way you approach blasting off a jump and going really high when you're popping it can vary by the way the takeoff ramp is built. For example, if you have a really steep, short takeoff ramp, if you try to pop it too quick and really do a fast, boosty squat, you might get stuck in a position where you're getting kicked up and your back tire's going in the air and you could go over the handlebars. So you really have to work on how you do this motion and really moderate the way you're popping off the jump through the quickness of the motions. For instance, if I'm coming off a really steep short ramp like that, I'm gonna slowly do the motion, and then it's almost like a quick snap the second I'm getting in the air, versus a long, mellow takeoff where I can make it kind of a faster, boostier motion because there's less consequence if I kick it up too fast and the steep ramp will take me over. In order to stay in control when you're boosting a jump, I find what works really well is once you get in the air, try sucking the bike up into you. I naturally also do a little bit of style, like I'll do a motor whip or a bit of a tabletop or get a little bit sideways in the air. I find having this little bit of stylish motion will give me more control and balance. It's just like a nice way to kind of move your body around in the air so you're not like really still and rigid. And then you'll naturally be in the right body position to bring down your front end, open up your body and nose into the landing nicely. When you boost jumps higher like this and really pop them, it's easy to get into a habit of going up really hard and then going down really hard, meaning you'll pop it and end up really nose heavy. And you really want to control how much you nose into a jump because you don't want to come into it too deep. That's also another reason why I soak my bike up into me, is because it gives me a little more motion to move the bike around. I have more movement to work with and it just gives me more free range to nose in and set me up for the landing zone. When you're flowing through a technical set of jumps, you can practice by linking these two skills together. If you find a flatter, quicker jump, I really want you to practice scrubbing on it and then link the next jump into a pop. So you're going fast, slow, high, low, and that's kind of what's going on throughout the line. And it's a really great way to play around with your speed control and your air time. And if you really can master both these techniques, you'll have an amazing amount of bike control on dirt jumps.